Welcome to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to give you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I want to tell you about some very, very exciting news. My new book, The Only Skill That Matters, has recently been published as of September 3rd, 2019, and I would absolutely love for you to pick up a copy and please, please, please leave a review. The book goes into my entire story with accelerated learning, shares a lot of what I've learned, a lot of the mistakes I've made, and gives you a practical and fun way to implement all the incredibly powerful skills around learning, memory, and speed reading that I've taught to over 200,000 people. To check it out and pick up your very own copy, please visit superhumanacademy.com/book. That's superhumanacademy.com/book. Greetings, super friends, and welcome to this week's episode, which is lovingly crafted thanks to a 5-star review from My Steve 1 of the US of A, who says, 5 stars, don't stop. This is such a great podcast. So many programs or podcasts like this promise that you will be able to live on 3 hours of sleep and be motivated enough to change the world in a day. I love how realistic but still inspiring your podcast is. Every time I find a podcast I love, it is already over or it stops creating episodes. So please keep going. Don't stop. You are changing lives. Wow. Thank you so much, My Steve. And if I had ever considered taking a break, a review like that is enough to keep me going. So if you haven't left one, please go ahead and leave one wherever reviews are left. On to today's episode. Guys and gals, today we are joined by Danielle Ryan Broida. She is a registered herbalist of the American Herbalists Guild. She's a certified holistic nutritionist and the national educator at Four Sigmatic. She is also a mycologist, which we talked about in depth, and has studied Ayurveda in India. She has traveled the world, studied and become a certified raw chef, a detox coach, and many, many, many other things, such as studying at the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism. Her bio is very, very long. I'm not going to give you all of it, but today she is focused on teaching people how we can discover the wide, wide world of mushrooms, this entire kingdom of millions, it turns out, millions and millions and millions of species, many more than there are of plants that we don't use. We should use, but we don't use. And so I learned a ton in this podcast. I know we've covered mushrooms in the past and all of their healing properties. In this episode, we went deeper because this is the first time I've gotten the chance to talk to a mycologist and someone who is actually a registered herbalist. So we went far and wide, we went deep, and we really, really start to understand throughout this episode just how many different things mushrooms can do, how little we understand, and how important it is for us to start incorporating this into our superhuman routine. So I really enjoyed the episode. I think you will as well. So please allow me to introduce Danielle Ryan Broida. Danielle, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm so well. Thanks so much for having me today, Jonathan.
Awesome. So I think we should address, yes, for those watching the video, I am wearing geeky blue blocking glasses, but you have out-weirded me today. Tell us a bit about the getup.
So today I am Buzz Lightyear. It is October 31st, so it is Halloween today as we record. And awesome. We're a very fun, quirky company. We'll talk about Four Sigmatic a little bit later, but we have a Halloween contest today. And so we take Halloween and competition very seriously.
Love that.
I'm with the whole team in Colorado today, and we're all different Toy Story characters.
So cool. Now, when you're not being Buzz Lightyear, tell our audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a registered herbalist by trade with the American Herbalists Guild and holistic nutritionist. I'm an instructor of mycology, so I teach the science of functional mushrooms at the graduate school that I went to here in Boulder, Colorado. And my day job, I'm the national educator at Four Sigmatic. So we're a superfood wellness company, and our areas of expertise are adaptogens and mushrooms.
That is so cool. I did not know that you could be a mycologist. I mean, I get it makes sense. You're my first mycologist.
I'm so glad to be here. Yeah. I didn't even kind of expect to go down that path. My path was really natural medicine, alternative medicine, and healing through nature. And kind of the mushrooms found me, as I like to say. Have you ever been foraging?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's this thing where no matter how hard you try, it's kind of up to the mushrooms when they're going to appear to you. And in a really similar way, that's what happened in my own life path. I didn't have this idea that I was going to focus on mushrooms, and one thing led to another, and it was really organic, and here I am.
Incredible. What sparked your passion in health? I always struggle how to ask this question, because the question I want to ask is, what happened along your journey that made health such an important part of your purpose? But that's an intense question. So what sparked your interest in health, I guess, is what I'd like to ask.
Yeah. I wish there was this one golden moment that I could just refer to, but it's been such a path. It's been such a progress with little things happening throughout my whole life. And it really began, I think I can pay a little homage to my mom and dad, who their company growing up, they were inventors, and their company was called Ecological Packaging Incorporated. And
Cool.
So their goal was to get rid of styrofoam and create reusable packaging out of recycled materials about 20 years too early. So
Right.
it was a big struggle, but that was really kind of in the background growing up for me. And my mom especially had these little planted seeds. If she would brew kombucha before it was ever
Wow.
bought out in the marketplace, and was really involved in being a hemp activist. And I had hemp clothes and hemp cereal
That's so
growing
cool.
up. So cool. Very quirky and different. You know, they never worked for someone. They were always entrepreneurs. And so it was very much a challenging. Some years were amazing and we'd be living large, and other years it was like, you can only have half a bagel today. Like there's,
Wow.
it's tight. And so, that environmental entrepreneurial mindset was always in the background growing up, for me. And starting, for some reason, when I was 8 years old, I decided that I didn't want to eat meat anymore. I think that was this first catalyst moment of health. And it had nothing to do with, animal rights or even environmentalism at that point. It was really just this connection. I started asking, I was like, what is this that I'm eating? My mom was like, oh, it's chicken. And I said, yeah, but what part? Like I wanted to understand what was in front of me. And I think that's this thread that has carried through, really trying to understand, does this make sense? What's the full picture? What's the story? What's the root really? And where's the connection through it all? And so without getting too carried away, that led me into a lot of different environmental work. And then through that again, okay, but what's the root and what's really relevant to us? And I got involved in food justice and urban agriculture and organic farming. And then still I'm like, okay, what's beyond that? How can we even get this food? And became really passionate about composting. So industrial composting was really important to me, and figuring out ways that we could actually build the soil to grow our food. And then looking in even deeper into the soil, I started understanding mycelium and getting more involved in mycology. And anyway, many different chapters throughout that, but led me into graduate studies in herbal medicine. And it was, again, the mushrooms kind of chose me. It was even within my years at graduate school for herbal medicine, there was very little focus on mushrooms.
Right.
So I'm again, okay, what's missing? Where is that? And I had been growing mushrooms at home and really interested in their medicine. And yet it was such a small portion of the more formal education. And so that intrigued me even more. I'm like, okay, why is that? And anyways, when I opened my private practice, a lot of the individuals that showed up at my door were they had chronic illnesses. They basically had, undiagnosed ailments, a lot of autoimmunity. And they said, I've tried every single practitioner and you're my last resort. What can you do for me?
Wow.
And functional mushrooms were one of the safest, most effective natural treatments for this huge range of diverse conditions that I was seeing. And so before I knew it, I had a functional mushroom based practice. And it was like, yeah, there was no intention. It was kind of like, okay, what's showing up right in front of me and how can I respond to it?
That is so fascinating. And if I'm hearing correctly, it was kind of like you went down this path of herbalism, and as Taro told me, everyone talks about the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. No one's talking about this third entire kingdom with, I don't know if it's millions, but hundreds of thousands of species and this crazy world of fungi.
Yes.
And that it has there is an analogous fungi to every possible plant medicine. Tell me about the learning and discovery process, because there's not a lot of information out there about mushrooms. I mean, there wasn't back then. Now, Four Sigmatic has put out a lot of this information and published books on it. But how do you go about learning about something that no one's talking about?
It is such still this wild, evolving world. A lot of the talks that I do, I call it unraveling the mysterious, because there is still so much mystery, and that's kind of what keeps me going. It keeps me so excited that we don't know even the tip of the iceberg. Like, I know like the tiniest little sliver about this entire world, and it's like it's never ending. I can just continue to learn and dig in. So it kind of came in many different boxes, but there's this amazing man, Peter McCoy, and he wrote this book. It's this huge book called Radical Mycology, and it's kind of a treatise on growing your own mushrooms and DIY mycology in your own kitchen. And he was doing these traveling courses across the country. So you would go and do these intensive courses with him. And it was during my time as a student at the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism. And I was like, I'm not getting this information or the amount of information that I want from the classroom. So I booked this trip. I went to New Mexico and did this intensive study with Peter. And it totally blew my mind open. That was kind of the beginning, and began using this liquid culture technique to grow, starting with oyster mushrooms in my own home, in my little cabin in the woods here in Colorado. And this, I think, is this is a really similar story with people interested in mushrooms. It's like you just choose to play and experiment and find teachers, in wherever you can, and then really begin to experiment with it kind of hands-on in your own life.
Wow. What kind of things does one learn in this process of mycology? Because you come at it from two different angles, right? You're fascinated in how the mushroom works and how to grow it and stuff, but you also have this health background and this herbalist background, and you want to understand what's going on in the body. So talk to me about some of the mushrooms you discovered that blew your mind and some of the ways that you were treating patients. And my goal with this question is to impress upon the audience just how much healing power there is with mushrooms and how many different medicines there are in the kingdom of fungi. So I'd love for you to share some examples of things that blew your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And two parts here, because I totally hear you're like, yeah, it's different to grow and to have that kind of hands-on fascination, and then the world really sitting in an office and working directly with, your clients and creating medicine for them. But for me, it's totally one line. It's so important to have both. The type of herbalism that I studied, and I'm considered a Western herbalist or vitalist herbalist, and it means looking at what medicine is in our own backyard and how can we utilize that to nourish and heal our bodies and our clients' bodies. And so growing and being connected to the medicine is totally interconnected to the process of healing. So instead of ordering, whatever root or leaf or flower from another country online and then formulating that for my clients, it was always, how can I grow as much of my own medicine or go and wild forage and harvest it myself to be able to really, that it's all about connection, like really offer, like know every part of this process. So I grow a lot of my plants, grow as many mushrooms as possible. I wish I could keep that up more. I'm on the road a lot, but it's just kind of, it's the full circle of providing healing in a holistic way. It's like knowing the source and then knowing where it's ending up in your body.
So cool.
And wow, where to begin? We have so much to talk about with functional.
We got time. We got time.
So I'll just kind of, I think maybe people know we talked about fungi as this kingdom, and just to give everyone an idea of how vast this kingdom is, we're still discovering. You said, are there a couple 100,000 or millions? The numbers are constantly changing. It's like 5 million, 6 million species, but they're vast. We know there's at least 6 times as many species in the fungi kingdom as all plants on Earth.
Oh my God.
Isn't that nuts? Like, you think about the plants we're familiar with, from trees and fruits and grains, vegetables, and then 6 times as many species in this fungi kingdom. So it's vast, right? We have so much to learn and unravel within it.
Right.
And what we're going to be talking about today are this subsect of species. Most of them grow on trees, and they're called functional mushrooms. And again, the number is going to be different no matter who you talk to, but there's a couple hundred functional mushrooms. And within the marketplace, we're really focusing on 4 to 10 are kind of the big players. And I feel like those 4 to 10 have taken the spotlight because as a Western culture, we need what those 4 to 10 species can offer us.
Yeah.
Right. We're looking for support with kind of these big things: stress, sleep, immunity, brain function, energy. And we have these incredible allies that can offer us exactly those things that we're looking for, but haven't known that they're available to turn to. So we've been turning to all these, just really what we know. It's like no one's fault. It's just like, oh, why wouldn't I grab a Red Bull if I need a bunch of energy? Because I've never heard of cordyceps mushroom before. Yeah. Right. And I think that's finally, the tides are finally shifting, and getting to have conversations like this and books that are coming out, and the more and more we can educate, and really it's a remembering, because it's nothing new. I tell people this all the time. I'm constantly on the road sharing cups of mushroom coffee and mushroom tea and cacao with people, and they're like, wow, this is so cool. This is so new to be drinking mushrooms like this. And I like to remind them, drinking mushrooms is one of the most ancient practices.
Right.
As humans, we know, it's at least 5,000 years, if not longer, that humans have had this relationship with the fungi species, and specifically these functional fungi.
Well, it would have to be older, right? Because, we know in the plant kingdom, these plants, like, they created a lot of these adaptations as a evolutionary, survival tactic, right? Like, the reason berries are sweet is because it makes mammals like us eat the seeds, poop the seeds somewhere else, So you have to imagine that fungi, for example, psilocybin, right? That was a strategy to get you, I'm not sure why, maybe to stop eating because you're hallucinating and leave the mushroom alone, spread the spores and then not eat any more of it. But you have to imagine that over the course of millions and millions of years, hominids knew about this stuff, and this was a tactic, whatever pre-human hominid eats this mushroom and feels really relaxed and wants to go eat more of that mushroom. And mushrooms are such a, because they are rhizomatic, I think is the right term, or, they multiply in spores. It's like when you spread it out, you're doing it a solid.
Yes. Yep. And I'm so glad, you brought that up. I'm like, there's so many different paths I want to go down with origin stories. Right. But there's this quote just to kind of paint the picture of how ancient these fungi species are. I want to share this quote that my mushroom teacher, Peter McCoy, says, and it just is so cool to put things in perspective. So the quote is, if the entirety of Earth's history was compressed to a 24-hour clock, and today was midnight on that clock, so we've lived through the whole day, fungi may have evolved as long as 18 hours and 40 minutes ago. Right. And in comparison, modern humans would have only existed for 1 second.
Right.
So
wild.
just as you mentioned, so many different cultures, animals, just other species have had symbiotic relationship with so many species within the fungi kingdom.
Right.
And it's what I've been fascinated about is why they've been put in this kind of dark corner to our minds in the West. Like they really are this mysterious, and of course, so much of the species of mushrooms that do actually fruit mushrooms, right? Not all the species create a full fruiting body of mushrooms, but even of those, so much of their life lives underground. So it's natural to have this lore and kind of mystery around them. And yet I love saying the way to bring something out of the corner, to bring it out of a dark, unknown place, is to sit down and have a cup of tea with it, have a cup of coffee with it, right? Have a chat. And that's what, so, with our work at Four Sigmatic, it's so much bigger than drinking mushroom coffee, but it's this initial way to kind of open the door and bring something to the table so that we can get our minds blown and talk about how we're related to fungi and their evolution and, how we've evolved with them. And I mean, on and on we could.
Yeah. When I met Taro, the founder of Four Sigmatic, for the first time, I was like, so what do you do? He's like, I'm on a mission to reintroduce the lost kingdom of fungi to the food, the food conversation. And I was like, this guy's crazy. But then he went and did it. And now you guys are, I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of people all over the world on this mission. And it's been incredible. And I'm a big fan of the products. Talk to me about, we've talked on the show a little bit about the different kinds of mushrooms, but I'd love to hear, we've talked about them from a biohacking perspective. I'd love to hear from a treatment perspective as a registered herbalist.
Yes.
What kind of things can mushrooms treat?
Yeah. So they're very root-based, like no pun intended, which is they're very different than many other herbs that you use that are meant to basically treat a specific symptom you're experiencing. So for example, I have a rash on my arm. You could put calendula salve on there and it would maybe treat it. But the root-based way to address whatever skin outbreak would be what's going on with that individual's liver, right? How can we help them detox properly so that what's actually happening internally can resolve and you're not just masking or suppressing anything? And this is the magic of fungi, is they're nourishing, they're building really from this place of the root up. And I almost think of them, I love that our theme is kind of superhero and I'm dressed up today, but I think of them like light switches, really turning on what our bodies, or reactivating what our bodies have already evolved to do naturally, but for a slew of reasons, whether it's stress or lack of sleep or food allergens, I mean, you name it, different causes of inflammation, the way that our bodies are meant to work have been stopped up. I think of a river flowing and this vitality pulsing through us. And then we have these blockages that are these like mini rocks or dams in our vital river, our vital flow of life, our chi. And what mushrooms are doing are helping to basically remove those obstacles so that we can kind of power up the flow of our river. And it might sound a little heady, but the point is they're not really doing anything external. So they're not, they're not suppressing, they're not tricking our system in any way. They're really turning us up.
Right. It's not the lavender essential oil on the rash. It's treating the cause of the rash, which there's a place for both. I think when you're suffering from the rash, you just want to hide the symptoms. I find that so interesting. So as I understand it, we've got, like you said, these 4 to 10 different players, and I think Four Sigmatic has done, not to pitch the product or anything, but Four Sigmatic's done a really good job of simplifying, right? It's like, if you want better VO2 max, and this has been proven, you need to consume cordyceps. This is why I consume cordyceps every single day. If you want to sleep better, reishi has been proven. If you want to focus better, lion's mane's been proven. You can tell I've been around the products a long time, and I believe in them. What are the ones that people don't know about and can be using? I know Four Sigmatic has recently gone out into stuff that I don't know about like turkey tail and all kinds of like weird stuff. So what are the ones and what are they doing in our bodies? Like what kind of things? I guess the question I want to ask, I'm just so excited about this conversation, I can't formulate my thoughts, is what are, and I don't know if this is like a weird FDA thing where you can't say specifically, you know, this does this, but what are the things that people are currently going to their medicine cabinet and grabbing something out of a plastic bottle that they should consider instead going to a mushroom medicine for?
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. No matter what person would show up at my door, you know, and this is in private practice, there's so many people that I talk to out in the world. We don't understand. We experience a symptom and we don't know where it's actually originating from in the body. Mm-hmm. So the big players, it's like, let's talk about stress real quick, right? So I just got back from New York City last night. It's like this crazy pulsing energy. Everyone is so stressed. Not everyone. A lot of people are really stressed. And I think about stress and the way we evolved to deal with stress. And it was like an animal was coming to fight us. So our bodies, you know, we flood our bloodstream with adrenaline, cortisol. We have all this stamina to fight this animal, you know, fight or flight. And the last thing that your body is giving you signals of is, oh, are you hungry? Are you tired? Like all the other things that make you human. And so many of the times, the common ailments that people are dealing with today, whether it's, you know, gaining weight or digestive issues, headaches, not being able to sleep, stress that manifests in 100 different ways, we're maybe not understanding, okay, what's actually coming from? What can we support first? And then see what kind of naturally falls away. Right. And so, yeah, there's these three big areas that functional mushrooms they all have in common and they all support. So I like to think of it like both of us, we're both human beings. We're like on this, you know, journey to improve people's lives in the health and wellness sector, right? We have these commonalities that we share, and yet we're each going out into the world and offering something slightly unique. Mm-hmm. Same with these functional mushrooms. They have these commonalities that they share. And then within that, they each have their own superpower, let's say. Yeah. And these three big things that they all have in common, they support digestive health, right? Gut health, which we know so much incredible research happening about gut health in our second brain. So gut health, our immune support, and stress support as adaptogens. And so it's really, you know, it's almost like no matter what you're dealing with, if you can bring, and we can talk about what specific mushrooms to choose, but if you can bring this category of functional mushrooms on board, you might not realize that it is, you know, suppressed immunity, or you're not getting sufficient prebiotics, and so your digestion is not working optimally, or, you know, your adrenals are being really fatigued because you're overly stressed and propped up on stimulants all the time. And so even, you know, without choosing your specific mushroom, bringing this category on board, it's amazing to kind of nourish and tonify with that for even a couple days, a couple weeks. And then it's almost like weeding out the fog. It's like, okay, once these kind of root places have been supported, then you can see what's still remaining. What symptoms are you actually still experiencing?
Let's go ahead and take a quick moment here to thank this episode's sponsor, Ambro Greens from Ambronite. Ambro Greens are the tastiest and easiest way to get daily greens for gut health, immunity, and freedom from cravings. Now, if you want to try Ambro Greens out for a full 5 days and experience the tremendous increases in energy and vitality, go ahead and visit ambronite.com/superhuman. That's AMBRONITE.com/superhuman and get your 5-day package of Ambro Greens for just $9.90. If I'm understanding correctly, mushrooms are really working a lot on the central nervous system, on adrenal glands, on things like that. If your arteries are clogged, it might not, you know, it's not at that level. More likely it's working on stress response, maybe insulin response, things like that are working in different higher level systems in the body. For example, if you have pain in your joints, that's probably not something to go to mushrooms for. Whereas if you have anxiety or, we know from fascinating studies around depression and psilocybin, if you've got something going on with your brain, that's a good place to say, hey, there might be a mushroom that could help me.
Yeah.
I like
absolutely. That. Even if you do have joint pain, maybe you are, not getting sufficient rest. And so your body,
right.
There's so many things. I mean, or your immune system isn't strong enough to actually fight whatever is causing that
right.
pain, if there is a virus or something in your system. So they're meant to kind of turn us up. I mean, it sounds really bizarre. And then of course they each do, and I think these, but we can go through maybe other mushrooms that each kind of do have their own specific function.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. And I'm going to have a little disclaimer because I think, just like you said at Four Sigmatic, we've done a good job of kind of creating a character for each mushroom, right? So we say, think with lion's mane or get going with cordyceps, and that helps people in the world to understand and kind of have this takeaway. Right. And yet there's so many incredible actions that each of these fungi can offer us.
I didn't know that.
There's so much more, than just, it's like this for this. They're incredibly complex and have hundreds of different constituents in them that are acting in the body and acting slightly differently in every body that takes them. What we're going to say, I never want people to be like, cool, got it, door closed, I'm never going to learn more about Maitake now.
It's so funny you say that because I just Googled Maitake because that's one of the new ones that Ari was sweet enough to send me a package of the Maitake, and I was like, I wonder what else it does besides Gratify. So I would love if you could lay out okay, here are those 4 to 10, and here are all the crazy things that it's doing. I realize you did years of study to learn this stuff, so give me the highlights maybe, because I'm guilty of exactly what you just said. Okay, I tell people lion's mane is kind of like nature's yerba mate. It's got some caffeine. It's light caffeine. It does this. And reishi is kind of like nature's valerian root. It just kind of helps you come down. When I talk about this stuff and why I drink it and why I pour it for people all the time, but I'm guilty of that. I didn't know that reishi had more to offer and chaga has more to offer. So tell me more.
Yes. And I'm so glad you're spreading that knowledge too. And we really need that. And that's a really great way for people to begin, because it's overwhelming when you're like, what do you mean this does 1,000 things? I don't know where to start. So that, I guess we'll start that they're adaptogens. And I think you've talked about adaptogens before. Mm-hmm. And what makes adaptogens so cool is there's a couple different things about adaptogens, right? They're non-toxic and non-habit forming, but they're non-specific. And that's what's so cool. So even though, you could take either reishi or valerian root to fall asleep at night, I take reishi every morning when I wake up. Right? Really? Reishi is just supporting our stress response, supporting heart health. There's reishi, she's our queen of mushrooms. And so, depending on what you're going through, what your stress response is, or perhaps the climate you're in, what you've eaten that day, we could take the exact same reishi extract and it's going to do something different to adjust to what your body needs at this time versus what my body needs. So they're fascinating. They're really working to find this balance, this equilibrium in every body that's ingesting them.
Okay, hit me with some more. Give me some more. Because I just looked at Maitake, which you guys say Gratify with Maitake, right? So mood elevation and things like that. And I just looked, and it's been shown in studies to induce I always have difficulty with this word, apoptosis, and helps with management of diabetes and has antioxidants and can stimulate immune response. So it is doing all kinds of different stuff in different groups of people. Do another.
Okay, so we'll kind of do it by tiers. So the first tier, I think you've probably hit home on, and that's the big four are reishi, chaga, lion's mane, and cordyceps. And those are kind of the big players. And then I think the next tier, the next four right underneath them, not that they're worse, I'm just saying this is the way humans are kind of unraveling, is Maitake, shiitake, turkey tail, and tremella. So these are kind of hopefully what we'll start seeing seeing next. And Maitake is so amazing. Like we put Maitake in, I mean, I love Maitake, right? We call it like our hanger mushroom, like Gratify or support blood sugar balance. And again, that's like a very root-based thing. Like people are propping themselves on stimulants and then having these deep crashes. And so how can we balance out our energy levels? And then what that can manifest, what that can look like in different bodies could be, you know, more focus for someone, or maybe more relaxation for someone else if they've been like, they're super stimulated by X, Y, or Z. So anyways, Maitake turkey tail. Turkey tail is, have you taken turkey tail yet?
I've had it in the Four Sigmatic chai latte. Okay,
great. Yeah. And it's cool. A lot of these mushrooms in this next category kind of bridge the line between culinary and functional or medicinal mushrooms. So I'll just say one last thing about Maitake, because a lot of people don't realize it's hen of the woods. So we have all these really silly common names, and people are always like, what? I never knew that was the same thing. Or, you know, dancing mushroom, people call Maitake. So I'm, as an herbalist, you know, trained to like honor the mushroom by its Latin name. So like Grifola frondosa is our Maitake, and we'll just kind of honor her there and move on to turkey tail. And a lot of times our Latin names can give us a lot of insight into what the mushrooms, what constituents they have, or what they can actually do for the body. Or just kind of get to know them more. So turkey tail, Corialis versicolor, or Trametes versicolor. Latin names change sometimes. Trametes means the one who is thin, and then versicolor means of various colorings. So if you see turkey tail, most of our functional mushrooms, right, they're growing on woods, and it kind of looks like the tail of a turkey, and it's this really beautiful, thin, almost striped mushroom. And tons of research on turkey tail. What we kind of toed it for, this like one takeaway, is for gut health.
Right.
Yeah. So have you done it much about prebiotics before?
Yep. Not a ton. Yeah. We've done more on probiotics, but prebiotic. Talk to me.
Prebiotic, right? So it's almost like, okay, if you're passionate about, like I said in my background, like passionate about the food that's actually growing in organic farming, but then you forget about the soil. Like, oh, I want to grow this really nutrient dense kale, and I want a lot of magnesium, so I'm going to like grow this kale, but you don't realize that there's no magnesium left in the soil. Right. And so, okay, going to the root of that. Similarly, within our own microbiome, it is like its own garden, its own farm in there. And there's different levels, right? So probiotics, awesome. And yet, if you don't have sufficient food to keep your probiotics alive, you're going to have to continually replenish with more and more probiotics. Right. So again, prebiotics like our mycelium, right, are these, again, going back to the root of the food for our probiotics. And turkey tail, so cool. Turkey tail specifically, cool. A ton of prebiotics that we know are greatly supportive for gut health. And again, once our gut begins to, when we're able to absorb nutrients properly, and actually utilize the nutrition that we're ingesting, it is like a superpower. It's like what can happen that, people didn't realize had anything to do with gut health. I mean, right. And I'm hesitant to say like just this one thing, because it doesn't work like that. It's you could have 100 different symptoms, and by treating the gut, any one of those symptoms could repair themselves naturally. Like it could, so it's again, depending, it's so body dependent. And this is one of the beautiful things too, that about this revival of traditional medicine. Before our current culture, it was never like, okay, no matter who has a headache, we all can take ibuprofen. Like that's never how medicine worked. It was like, John, like your body has a different constitution, right? So your body is unique, and kind of the four, different categories are like hot and cold, moist and dry. And so all of us have some combination of these elements within our body. And then the fungi and even the plants also have a similar combination, a unique combination of these 4 elements. So think of like nettle, for example, or maybe people think of cannabis, really drying, right? That's a really drying plant versus something like, cayenne pepper or ginger, really warming. And same, your body has a different temperature and moisture than mine. And so it's a lot about matchmaking, which sounds kind of funny, but it's
makes sense.
It's a synergy. Like, so yeah, anyways, you can pair these functional mushrooms with either other mushrooms or other herbs to basically direct them to what's going on in your individual body.
Right. Okay. So what overwhelms me, and I asked Aaron this when I was in the shroom room, but he's not a mycologist, is the balance, right? Because we do, and I think Americans especially are this way, right? Like we wake up in the morning, we take something to go up, but then we're too up, so we take something to go down, and then we can't sleep, so we take something to go down. It's like, doing these, I call it state design, right? Like you can design your state, and we try to always be in the right state. So like, how does someone navigate that, right? Because I could wake up in the morning, do a mushroom coffee to get my work done, and then, I start to feel a little sneezy, so I do a chaga, and then I can't get to sleep, so I do a reishi. So like, I imagine that in the body, these compounds have a long-lasting effect and kind of need to do their own thing, and you shouldn't be doing a cocktail every single day. So what are, and as I said, I'm a big fan of the products and I consume a lot of them. What are some rules for navigating, like, I took this, so I shouldn't take this, or I'm sure there's some kind of upper limit after which point your body just doesn't understand what it's supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. I have like an answer that is going to be really logistical, like Four Sigmatic answer, how people can like actually start doing this and incorporating this into their day. And then I have a more like heady herbalist, like who I am as Danielle answer. Okay. And I guess we'll start with the like easy to grasp Four Sigmatic answer. What we're trying to do. So we realize that everyone has habits. Mm-hmm. Like we all have habits. You can call them, just the things that you do every day. So just like you said, most of us wake up, we look to an upper, a stimulant, a cup of coffee, caffeine, etc. In the evening, we need something to unwind. So that could be a dessert, a glass of wine, etc. So we have these habits, these routines. And what we're trying to do is basically tap into those routines and create a better for you option at every point along that cycle. So, okay, you already drink coffee in the morning. We're going to create a better for you option. So you don't have to give up that coffee, because actually, it's like from the herbalist witchy, it's like the dose makes the poison, right? Totally. A little bit of coffee is awesome. Lots of antioxidants, there's B vitamins in there, different minerals. Too much coffee, right? And there's this threshold is like anxiety, rapid heartbeat, insomnia, on and on. And so how can we basically keep the good and ditch the bad, and then infuse these daily habits with kind of some of the world's most nutrient-dense, quote-unquote, superfoods, which we believe many are these functional mushrooms. So really, like, I encourage people, we could talk about the benefits of these mushrooms all day, and no matter how enticing it is, if it doesn't taste good, if it's not convenient, people are not going to do it.
Totally.
I used to tell my clients, like, medicine doesn't work if you don't take it. So I can make you like this awesome tincture, and you're like, yeah, tincture is cool, I'm going to carry that in my pocket. But if you already make, a smoothie every day, we're going to put your herbs in a powder, because that's the way it's going to work and be consistent. And the way, especially with functional mushrooms, the way that they're meant to be used is long-term. They're not like, oh, I have this symptom, let me pop on a mushroom real quick. They're meant to, and that's how they've always been used for thousands of years, whether it's in Algerian culture or, traditional Chinese medicine, Russian folk medicine. They're taken long-term, right? They're called longevity tonics, elixirs of life. chi tonics. And so you want to take them every day and have them become a habit, a part of your routine. And it's pretty much impossible to get people to start a new routine. I won't say impossible, but it's challenging. And so we're really like, okay, let's actually look at routines as a benefit, as a positive thing, and then find really, really simple, really delicious, easy ways to bring these really incredible superpowers on board to, I'm always looking at the why. Like, why are you drinking coffee? Okay, do you want to, turn your brain on? Do you want to, turn your body on with more physical energy? Let's actually make whatever you're doing more effective at why you're doing it. So instead of just, drinking a cup of coffee because you do it and then you want to sit down at your computer all day, let's add lion's mane on there, cut half the caffeine out, right? Mm-hmm. And then even hone it in, like channel it to what you actually want that coffee for in the first place.
I love that.
So yeah, like think about these different times a day. What do you do? And then we're constantly evolving. It's really fun at Four Sigmatic. We're not like, yeah, we have these answers and now everyone do them. It's like, what are people doing and how can we respond and create products that meet the demands of what people are looking for? So like we realized recently, another routine that a lot of people have is skincare. Like people spend a lot of time on their skincare routine. And so that's another way rolling out in 2020 is fully edible, functional mushroom-based skincare.
That's cool. I was going to ask when you guys were going to get out of teas because there's so much more.
Yeah. One thing that I'll say, this is like my own heady herbalist coming in, but about the drinking the medicine or I can't really call it medicine, but as an herbalist, we call it medicine. We'll call it like supplement or whatever. But the way that these mushrooms have always been used is their drink. Their drink is a tea. I think of old medicine men and women stirring these big cauldrons of roots and mushrooms, and you sit down from your day and you have a cup of tea. You taste whatever it is that is nourishing your body. Right. And there's this saying that the medicine starts in your mouth, right? That's the first place. Like if you eat something bitter, your liver is automatically going to start kicking into gear. Mm-hmm. Similarly, there's something so ancient. It's really this remembering, this reviving a tradition to drink the mushrooms. And so I love that part of it and that ritual. And so, yeah, I hope that's like, that continues to stay alive in at least some form. And yet, more importantly, the medicine doesn't work if you don't take it, right? So creating positive ways is super important as well.
Totally. So what is your routine? Or I understand that this is going to be very different for every person. But is it a mushroom coffee in the morning and then maybe in the afternoon, whatever, and then in the evening a reishi? Or is it because and I didn't know going into this conversation, consistency is important, right? So I didn't know I should be drinking that reishi every night, not just the nights I want to get a good night's sleep. I do take cordyceps every day, but what's a good measured dose for people to start this habit?
Mm-hmm. So I would start with between 500 milligrams and 1,500 milligrams a day if you're totally new to consuming functional mushrooms.
Which ones?
Depending. So think about what you are looking for support with that day. Think of like bringing a friend on board. Like, okay, I need to be really productive today. I have this friend, Jonathan, and, superpower brain man. And so you're my lion's man or something. I'm going to bring you on board for that day. So what are you looking for support with that day, and choosing your ally accordingly. Got it. And then it's so interesting. It's like I've seen really small, frail women who, can take 1.5 grams to 3 grams a day and feel awesome. And like really big, burly bodybuilder men who need, 500 milligrams to 1 gram a day. And that's their dose. And So yeah, basically like what's so cool about like little single serving packets, if we've kind of done that work for you. So starting with like 1 to 2 Four Sigmatic packets a day, and then it's all about listening to your body, like what, and you can play. I encourage a lot of play and experimentation of what are you looking for, and what dose is going to be right for your body. And again, it's just such a cool, continually evolving world, because for days, so I'll take my own life, for example. I was just in New York City the past 3 days, and I'm a little bit more stressed when I'm in New York City than when I'm at my little cabin in the woods here in Colorado. So I take sometimes 3 times as much, milligrams of whatever mushroom when I'm in a more stressful situation and even before I enter that stressful situation to prepare my body than when, I'm chilling and life is really calm.
Right.
And so you can think of it that way. And then even with all of our natural medicine, the idea, it's like, hopefully if let's say you've been really stressed, that's the theme of the day. And so you take magnesium for a while to support relaxation, from the cellular level. Mm-hmm. And hopefully after a few weeks, your stress response has diminished and you don't need that same amount that you did at the peak of your stress. And so at that point, you would mix it up. And so while mushrooms are safe and the tradition is taking them every day long term, I do always encourage mixing it up based on your body's changing needs. Maybe
that's really good to know.
Yeah.
That's really good to know. What is a piece of homework, Danielle, that we could give the audience today to try right away? I mean, I want to get people, I'm the learning guy, right? So I want people acting on what they learned today.
Yes. Okay. So let's just make it really simple. Everyone that's out there, think of what they do in the morning or what they do in the evening. Mm-hmm. What's your day look like? And let's elevate that existing thing, whatever it might be. And so if you drink coffee or matcha or something in the morning, add mushrooms to it, whether it's Four Sigmatic, any other brand, find a way to upgrade that by bringing the mushrooms into that. And then same in the evening, are you looking to unwind? Bring something like reishi on board in the evening. Kind of either swap out or add it to that evening unwinding, whatever routine. And do that every day for a couple weeks, right? So
Awesome.
It's not this once, but do it every day, and then share, with us here, with me, stories are some of the most important ways to learn about natural medicine. They're really, you can remember facts, but what you really remember is how you feel and how someone else has felt and what it's truly done for their body. So sharing, the more that we can all experiment and learn and recreate our relationship with the natural world and with the fungi, the more we get to connect with each other about it.
That's fantastic homework. I'm really hoping people are actually going to do it and check it out. And for anyone who doesn't already know, Four Sigmatic they didn't sponsor this episode. I just wanted to talk to Danielle, but they are a sponsor on the podcast. They do give, I think it's 20% off your first order. So if you haven't tried, I think it's coupon code superhuman. I'm not sure. We'll coordinate it so that it'll be in this episode before in the pre-read and whatnot, as a happy coincidence. But Danielle, I have now completely blasted through our time, and I still have plenty more questions. So I hope we get to hang out in a future episode. Where can people reach out and learn more maybe about you, or should we just send them to Four Sigmatic?
Yeah, social media is a really great place. I try to have my page be an educational platform. So I'm at Danielle Ryan Broida. Cool. And then if you want more education, our Four Sigmatic newsletters, they'll come from me, and I send them out every few weeks, and will be kind of tidbits on what's new, what are the hot adaptogens, how can you dig deeper into X, Y, and Z, elevate your routine in new and creative ways. So would love to talk to you guys there.
That is awesome. Danielle, it's been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did as well, so I want to thank you for that. I also want to ask, if people take away one big message or idea from this episode and carry it with them for the rest of their lives, what would you hope for that to be?
I hope that they know that there are hundreds of natural allies out there waiting to support their bodies. So no matter what you're dealing with, you're not alone. You're fully connected, interconnected to this beautiful web of life and this mycelium underneath your feet. And there are natural mushrooms and plants and, these really superpower medicines that are available to make you the best, most vital version of yourself.
Awesome. That's a fantastic point to end on. Danielle Ryan Broida, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks for tuning in to the award-winning Superhuman Academy podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit superhuman.blog. While you're at it, please take a moment to share this episode with a friend and leave us a review on iTunes. We'll see you next week.